Welcome to Blooming Wildwood Homestead. We are wrapping up week 3 of the Pantry Challenge, and I hope that you are finding a lot of success as we've been going through this process. I definitely have quite a few empty jars, which is nice to see that I'm using up some of my canned items that I have had on hand. I'm also finding that I'm kind of digging into the freezer and getting some of those items out as well. So it's been really nice to see this process and see which items I'm able to use up. On today's menu, we are going to be putting a whole chicken in the crock pot. I minced up some garlic and diced some onion. I'm going to stuff some on the inside. I find that when I put some of the onion and garlic on the inside of the chicken, it does really add to the overall flavor because it just gets to have that on both the inside and the outside. So I find that you have great flavor everywhere. I put a little bit of butter on top of the chicken and then added some of this Secret Garden spice mix that I had picked up from a little spice shop over in Leavenworth. And it's just a nice mixture, works great on vegetables as well as chicken and other kinds of meat. And then I topped that with a little bit of black pepper, freshly ground, and followed all of that up with a little bit more minced garlic and chopped onion on top of the chicken. Then I'm just going to let this cook all day. It really is just a nice way to get it set and then not have to worry about it until it's time to eat. So I put it on low and it cooked for about 6 hours, and that was really all that it needed. It was partially frozen, but I think the fact that it was on low and in a small crock pot really made a difference. As we're going through this challenge, we start to think about how we're going to continue to stock the pantry or how you might want to restock depending on where you're at with things. One of the ways that people will often stock their pantry is through buying in bulk. So today I want to talk about some of the pros and cons of buying in bulk to stock your pantry. Let's start out with some of the pros. One of the things that's really helpful when buying in bulk is that it can save you money. When you are purchasing things in a larger quantity, oftentimes the price per pound or per ounce is reduced, which will save you money overall. You do still need to price compare because just because something is in bulk doesn't necessarily automatically mean that it is going to be less expensive, and it doesn't mean that every bulk store is going to offer you the same price. So you'll have to look around at what your options are in your area and what you might be able to do as far as finding your best price. For me, if I'm going to buy something in bulk, usually my best options right now would be Costco or Azure, and I have purchased items from both of those locations before, and that seems to be a good option for me in my area. But you might have something that's even better. Sometimes you can find things at Walmart, but again, you have to really watch things. Sometimes I will find a bulk price at Walmart that is actually more than the item is with a smaller box, and it doesn't happen often, but it can happen. So you do just want to make sure that you are paying attention to prices and not automatically assuming that just because something is being sold in a larger quantity that it actually costs less. So make sure to watch your unit prices on all of those things. The second pro of buying in bulk is that you have fewer shopping trips. This saves you time for sure because you're not ending up having to go to the store as frequently. It also saves you gas money as well as the money that you would spend from impulse purchases while you're at the store. So a lot can be saved by reducing the number of trips to the grocery store. The third pro for buying in bulk is that it reduces waste. Since the items are coming in a larger package, you have a reduction in packaging, which ends up typically creating less garbage. Some of the items, depending on the type of packaging, might also come in packaging that can be recycled, or you might be able to use for a fire starter or something like that, which is again putting less into your garbage can. The fourth pro of buying in bulk is that it provides you a pantry backup. This is extremely important, and one of the main reasons why I think that everyone should have some type of pantry that they can work from. You want to have a little bit of security when it comes to your food items, and buying in bulk can aid in that. If you end up having a job loss or illness, some sort of health crisis, you want to be able to have something on hand so that you are not having to rely on daily or every other day trips to the grocery store. You really want to have something in the pantry that you're going to be able to pull from, and buying in bulk can help with some of that. So as with most things, there are also cons that go along with it, and when you are making the choice about what's going to be best for you and your family, you do have to look at both sides of the coin to decide what is best for you. So looking at the cons of buying in bulk for your pantry, the first con is that you might have a higher upfront cost. Even though the unit cost is less by buying in bulk, you do have a higher upfront cost because of the fact that you are buying a larger quantity. So if I buy 25 pounds of something, it's going to cost more initially, even though the price per pound is less than buying a 1 pound container or something like that. So just be aware that that will be an issue if you decide that you want to buy in bulk. This is one of the reasons why the pantry challenge can be really helpful for you, is that if you are eating out of the pantry during this time, you can free up some of your budget to be able to spend that money on bulk items, which can end up getting you ahead in the future. It's up to you on your rules, but I don't think you have to completely stop stocking the pantry while you are going through the pantry challenge. I think that you can reallocate some of your normal food budget and be really intentional with how you're going to restock the pantry and really see what it is that you need to use or that you need to restock with. And so if you decide to reallocate some of those things, it can help you to purchase some things in bulk, but know that you are going to have a higher upfront cost. Also, if you decide to shop someplace like Costco, there is a membership fee that you will have to pay. And while that's a yearly fee and not something that you're paying every time you go to the store, it is still an added cost that you do have to take into consideration when it comes to the value of utilizing that store for your bulk purchases. So if you are purchasing from a co-op, it just depends on the co-op or the place as to whether or not there are membership fees or things like that that you do need to consider as well. A second potential con is that you do have to have space for the storage. When you buy things in bulk and you have larger quantities of items, you do have to have somewhere to store those items. So I have my working pantry and where I'm going ahead and taking things and using things on a regular basis. But if I buy something in bulk, for example, rice, I need to have a space to be able to store the rest of the rice instead of just the small container that I'm using out of. So that's something that you do have to keep in mind. And if you have a smaller space, you may have more issues with being able to figure out how to navigate purchasing in bulk. This is something where you might have to get really creative. And I know some of you out there have already been really creative with where you can store things. Even with your canned goods, you have found different ways that you can go about storing things so that it works for you. When I had a different house, I would store a lot of my things in a closet space that I wasn't using. So any of my extra canned goods or things like that would go in that closet space. And that was one of the ways that I was able to kind of make that work. But you do have to get really creative if you decide that you're going to buy in bulk and you don't have a large storage space. Sort of going along with that, another potential con is that you have to have proper storage technique. So if you're purchasing a lot of items in bulk, you want to make sure that you're not losing those items. Otherwise, the amount of money that you saved goes completely out the window. So you want to make sure that you're storing them in the best way possible to have them for the future and to be able to utilize them for the future. And so just be aware that there could be some initial cost depending on what you're doing in storing those bulk items. If you have spices that you purchase in, say, a 1 pound package, you want to be able to have it in a usable amount. I put mine into the 1/2 pint jelly jars. It's worked out really well for me. I've done that with both my spices and with my baking powder, baking soda, some of those items as well. And then that way I have a very usable quantity and a usable amount in my working pantry, but I can keep any extra in my extended pantry, and it just makes things a little bit more workable. The other potential con, depending on the layout of your home and what you decide to do as far as storing in different containers, is the potential weight. If you're putting things into buckets and you fill the bucket full, it's going to have some added weight, which could be a potential issue if you're trying to navigate where to haul that around the house, or if you have an upstairs that you're trying to take it to, or if you have weight restrictions on what you can carry. You do have to be careful about that when you're thinking about purchasing in bulk, and that could be a reason why you might opt not to do that. So these are just a few of the pros and cons that I have thought of when it comes to purchasing in bulk for your pantry. If you can think of others, I would love to hear your comments down below. What are some pros and cons you have as far as purchasing in bulk or buying in bulk for your pantry? For myself, there are a lot of items that make a lot of sense to go ahead and purchase in bulk when I have the opportunity to do that. And so that is something that I feel like I will do. But I'm not buying every single thing in bulk because it just doesn't make sense for maybe what I'm using or what I'm doing. For example, having extra sugar on hand and buying like a 10-pound bag of sugar makes a lot of sense, especially during canning season when you're using it for preserving your jams and jellies and some of the other canned goods that you're working on preserving during that time. You're going to be using a larger quantity, a larger amount, and it makes sense to purchase a larger bag to have that on hand. Some of the other things that can make a lot of sense, rice is much less expensive to buy in bulk than it is to buy in a small container, and it's something that I will use. It lasts a really long time, so if I store it properly, I don't have any issue with being able to take a smaller container out to use now and then save the rest of that bag to use at a later time. And that's just something that makes sense for me to be able to do. A lot of baking items you can buy in a little bit larger quantity, particularly if you are working on cooking from scratch and you are doing more homemade, you're going to use up more of those items, and it might make sense to have some of those on hand. Also, the size of your family. If you're feeding many people, it's going to make a lot of sense to buy things in a larger quantity. So just consider some of the pros and cons and whether or not that would make sense for you. If you are finding value from today's discussion, I would love to invite you to click like and share this video with anyone that you think could benefit from thinking through some of the pros and cons of buying in bulk. To go along with the chicken, we are going to roast one of my favorite winter squashes, and that's the delicata squash. I used to not use it as frequently because I don't think I really understood how to cook it. But what I love about this squash is that you can eat both the outside and the inside, so there's less waste, and it's just very easy because I don't have to worry about peeling the squash. So I started out by taking the ends off and then attempting to cut it in half, but as you can see, that didn't really work out. I rarely actually cut it in half precisely, but that's always the goal, of course. And then you just want to put it into little slices. I try to get them as close to the same size as possible, just because that will really help with the cooking process. Once everything is sliced, you want to lay it out on a pan and make sure that you have a pan that's going to be big enough, and then just get everything kind of laid out. Once it's laid out, you want to drizzle it with some olive oil. I'm using some garlic infused olive oil that I happened to have, and I'm just going to drizzle that over the top. Then you can put some type of seasoning. I just used the garlic and herb spice seasoning that I've gotten from Costco, and I just like to sprinkle that over the top. Sometimes I will do some chopped fresh rosemary and a little black pepper. If you have other herbs growing in the garden, you could definitely use those as well. Then it goes into the oven at 400, cook it for 20 minutes. Then you'll want to turn over all of the pieces and cook it for an additional 10 to 15.
This squash is beautiful, roasted up so nicely. And the chicken's looking great as well. I ended up with quite a bit of actual liquid in there, and I'm going to save that, toss it in the freezer after it cools down so I can use that for any other kind of dish that I want. Put it in with some rice or add it to some soup. Anything else I want to cook and have some of that chicken broth flavor. And our final product, delicious meal. Fairly simple and easy with items that I had on hand.
Thank you for joining me today. I would love to invite you to be part of our community here at Blooming Wildwood Homestead, and I can't wait to see you back here next time. Bye, everyone.